Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is study. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear study used is to mean to spend time and attention in order to acquire knowledge on a subject. I've picked the verb study because many people are returning to class or schools today. And around this time of the year. So we have many students all the way from preschool or kindergarten all the way into college and graduate programs who are now going to be spending their time and attention in order to gain more knowledge on a variety of subjects. A second way you might hear study used is to mean to investigate and analyze a subject or situation in detail. Many times we'll hear about scientists and researchers who are studying a particular situation. I know I've heard it used quite a lot in relation to COVID-19. Different possible cures or treatments have been studied. They have been investigated and analyzed. A third way you can use the verb study is to mean to look closely in order to observe or read something. You'll see an example of this later, but I will add here that I think of maps. If I'm trying to determine where to go or how to get to some place, I oftentimes will study a map. You should know that study is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all you need to do is add ing to form studying. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to require a spelling change. Our verb study ends with a consonant, then a Y. So our rule in English is that we're going to change the Y to an I before we add ed. Our base verb study, ends in a vowel sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. Studied, studied. Notice I'm not adding an extra syllable as I say that past tense and participle form. Now let's spend a couple minutes looking at some phrasal verbs with study. The first you might hear is to study at. This means that someone is acquiring academic knowledge at a specific educational institution. Let me give you an example. I've studied at Valparaiso University, the University of Missouri, and Arizona State University. So at those specific colleges or universities. Another phrasal verb you might hear is study for. This means to learn intensively. So you're acquiring a lot of knowledge, you're spending a lot of time and attention in order to prepare for some type of test, quiz, or examination. An example of that, he's been studying for the ACT. ACT is a type of college entrance exam that's used here in the United States. A third phrasal verb with study is study under. This means to be taught by someone. Many times I've heard this used in connection to the arts, whether that's music or other like painting, sculpture, etc., those kind of physical arts. It's common to be taught by someone who is a master in that particular discipline or subject. An example of this, they studied under some of the best violin teachers in the world. Now let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple example sentences. Today we're going to focus on the past perfect and the simple future. We'll start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to note that one particular action has been completed in the past before another. So it's pretty common with the past perfect that we have one verb in the past perfect and then a second verb in the simple past tense. So the verb in the past perfect is the one that happened first. Let's take Well, before we look at an affirmative example, let's talk about how we form this. To make the past perfect, we need to use the past form of have, which is had, and then we're going to use the participle form of the verb. Now we're ready to look at that affirmative example. She had studied French before she took an Italian class. Okay? So her first action is to study the French language. Second action, now she's going to take or study Italian. If you want to make a negative past perfect sentence, just insert not between had and the participle. You might hear some people use the contraction hadn't, like in this example. We hadn't studied the map before we started hiking. This could be a problem, especially if we got lost. Maybe we're explaining why we took longer to hike, or something else that may not have went well, have not gone well. Now let's take a look at a yes or no question in the past perfect. To do this, start with had, then use your subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Had the students studied much before they took the test? Okay. Now let's take a look at the simple future. Today we're going to focus on using be, going, to, and our base verb. And the only tricky thing here to remember is the form of be. Okay, so our subject is going to control the word that comes next. If our subject is you, we, or they, we'll use are. If our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use is. And if the subject is I, we'll use am. Okay. Now let's look at our affirmative example. Scientists are going to study the causes of this rare type of cancer. Okay, so that's kind of going back, I think, to our second definition we looked at earlier, investigating, trying to better understand something. Scientists is plural, so it's like saying they. That's why you see the form of be, are, in that particular sentence. Now, if you want to make a negative simple future sentence using be going to, simply add not after our be verb. You can see that in our example here. He isn't going to study abroad next year. Okay? So studying in a foreign country, not the one in which the person kind of presently is studying at. If you want to make a yes or no question in the simple future, start with the form of be that matches your subject, and the subject will come next, and then you'll still follow the same pattern, going, to, and the base verb. Here's another example. Are you going to study poetry in that class? Right? That would connect back to our first definition about learning about a particular academic subject or topic. Now, let's spend a couple minutes looking at some words that are related to our verb study. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. So, same spelling, same pronunciation. Just like our verb, the noun study can have a couple different meanings. One is the time and attention that is spent acquiring knowledge on an academic subject. Here's an example of this usage in a sentence. He has devoted his career to the study of plants. Okay, so that is his specialty, his focus. That connects there to our first definition. The second way we can use the noun study is to refer to a detailed investigation and analysis of a subject or a situation. An example of that could be, there are many ongoing studies of the effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccinations. This is very much a true sentence and accurate of what is happening. We have scientists and various researchers investigating and analyzing how the vaccines that were already developed are in treating COVID for longer periods of time, how it affects different variants as well. A third way you might hear the noun study used is to refer to a room that is used or designed for reading, writing, or other academic work. An example of this could be, the guest bedroom became a study during the pandemic. So maybe the sentence is describing in someone's house, they kind of converted a room so that children or other family members would have a quiet place in order to read, write, or do their academic work. Another related word is the noun student. It can have a couple different meanings. One is just referring to a person who is studying at a school or a college. An example of that, students are going back to school this week. This is pretty true in the state where I live, in Iowa, but perhaps in your state or your part of the world, they may have different starting points. Could be after Labor Day. For some, it's early August. A second way to use the noun student is to refer to a person who takes interest in a particular subject. So this might not be referring to someone who is enrolled or who is studying at a particular school or college. Perhaps they're just reading and learning on their own. An example of that, she's been a student of foreign policy. So perhaps she reads a lot of books, maybe listens to certain podcasts, really tries to learn about this particular subject, foreign policy. The last word I'm going to leave you with today is the adjective studious. It refers to someone who is spending a lot of time studying or reading. An example of this, their youngest child has always been quite studious, right? So if someone describes you with this particular adjective, I would take it as a compliment. They see that you are working hard to acquire knowledge. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.